Wait, what is that? Oh, okay, live. Okay, great. Hey everyone. I think we're gonna go live on Instagram soon, hopefully. So let's see. Tara's not here right now. Okay, so it's just me, myself. But Tara should be coming in like midway through, so she'll be popping by. But don't forget to follow all of our social medias before we get started. You can go to Instagram, TikTok, or actually X now, Facebook. You can find us at 180 Shift. And then just check us out. I think you can also go to our website right now. I think it was having little issues yesterday, but they should be okay now. So 180shift.org. But yeah, so we have a great guest today. She's been interviewed twice by me. It was back, I think, in October, was it?
November.
For November? Okay, November was the first time, and then I also you caught me at the UCLA university. So yeah, UCLA. So that was crazy, but I don't know. I think you can just introduce yourself. Just a quick like introduction.
Yeah, thank you for having me. My name is Karin Lang. I am first generation American, but my family's from Israel. I have a lot of family there. I have a lot of friends there. So I was definitely impacted on October 7th. I also went to UCLA for undergrad. I graduated in 2018 and I live in Brentwood. So when I heard that everything was popping off, I was close enough to kind of just hop over there and see what happened. That's what I
Yeah.
saw you.
Now kind of going to that day, that was so interesting when I saw you that day. I went there during like probably around 4 p.m. Around that time, I was there checking out UCLA since I knew that there was an encampment there. I was just kind of seeing what was happening. Wanted to get a feel for everything, but then I also wanted to go inside the encampment to go ask people questions. But to no surprise, there was absolutely no one talking. I probably got 2 interviews from the whole entire day, but they were very hard to get because a lot of people will have or refer you to a media liaison, right? And then even then, like, where are the media liaisons? Almost nowhere.
Which just the fact of having a media liaison for a grassroots, let's camp out and
Mm-hmm.
set up some tents is pretty crazy when you think about it.
It is because, like, why don't you want to talk? That's one thing that I was wondering about. But I'm not sure if you know, but they had that check-in point where there was one point in and one point out of the encampment. Now I was there for a little while, and I was there to see sort of an introduction to people going into the encampment. It was sort of a briefing. There were some people there just telling them there was a code of conduct. So one of them was mask must be on at all times.
Why?
One of the reasons they gave us was, well, to stop spread of sickness. Okay. Now we can get into that a little bit of our reasons why we may think because I thought that was interesting. But that was one of them. Obviously, like no smoking or alcohol was something. Another thing was no talking to media at all, which raised some concerns to me because, I mean, why would you not want to talk about something that you want, your voice to be heard? You want changes to be done, so why not talk about it? And then another thing was the phone call to call if in case you get arrested. Everyone was given a phone number to call to let people know, hey, I'm in jail right now, or I need some help, and that number is available to all those people there. So that's an interesting thing. But it was just crazy. I mean, I don't know. What did you see when you got to UCLA?
So I got there around 11:30,
Mm-hmm.
and I kind of didn't know what was going on. So as I got closer, I didn't realize that there was kind of this like no man's land in
Mm.
the middle. So there was the encampment, the metal barricades, their like security guard
Mm-hmm.
type people, and then there was just maybe like 10, 15, 20 feet of no one, and then the pro Israel side. And so I was just like, oh, like why aren't people getting close? Like it like because I was there on Sunday when there was the counter protest,
Mm-hmm.
and then they kind of countered our counter protest. And so
Mm.
I was face to face with people. People were engaging in conversations. Some were heated, some were educational, some were it doesn't matter. But to me, the whole point was like, okay, let's hash it. Like, let's talk it out. Let's hash it out. And no one was close to each other. So I kind of like accidentally walked through that area. And I guess I didn't get hit by them. I didn't see them because I was turned, but I got like a few bottles thrown over my head because it's like, don't cross here kind of thing. And then I understood the vibe of the situation. When I got there, there was no violence. There was no mixing of the two. It was very separate, like I said, and it was just a big speaker, a bunch of pro-Israel, younger people playing a children's song on a big speaker, like a children's song in Hebrew to kind of just, it's so it was just a disruption. And then the fireworks happened. I think I saw maybe like one or two by the time I got there. And again, like, I'm not condoning things that cross the line, but I think the way that it has been portrayed of how it happened and like this violent attack was coordinated is not true. Because when I was there, it was very separate. They were playing speakers, and it's like, okay, like, what are we doing here? Like, what's gonna happen? What's the point?
Right.
You know? And I was kind of like, okay, cool.
Right.
And then at one point, the guy whose speaker, I'm assuming it is, was kind of turned away, and someone ran out from the camp and stole the speaker. Now, this is a huge speaker, like probably half my size.
Wow, okay.
It's expensive.
Yeah.
So came out, stole the speaker, and started running back into the camp to kind of shut the music off and take it. The guy whose speaker it was ran after him and a few other people. Now, when they made it to the barricades, people just climbed over, and then it turned into a brawl, like, between that small group.
Interesting. So I wasn't there when that happened. I had gone off campus, came here to studio, did my podcast, and then I actually went after. So I didn't show up till probably until I saw you around like 12, almost 1.
Yeah, so I had been there for like maybe 2 hours by the time I saw you, and like had seen the escalation, de-escalation, escalation, de-escalation. It also wasn't like a consistent violence. It was both sides were agitating and pointing each other's buttons to kind of get the violence out, you know?
Right.
But when that happened, that was the first brawl that I saw. And I think the whole thing started around 11, like people being there. Right. I got there around 11:30, and that was the first thing that I saw. And like, I saw them hit a kid in the face with either a skateboard or a 2x4 or I don't know what, but he was gushing blood, like gushing. So that was the first instance of violence that I saw. And then from there, it was kind of like both groups nudging at each other. Now, they have the barricades and the wood and everything. So when they throw pepper spray or hit people, they have those pieces of wood protecting them. So they're behind these barricades just hitting. And now, again, I'm not going to say that there was no violence from the pro-Israel side. That's not my point. My point is to characterize it the way that it's been characterized is a blatant lie. I was there, and they pepper sprayed and I guess I don't know what bear spray is. Yeah. At least 10 times while I was there. And like, people are like, their eyes, people are throwing up. Like, it was insane. And the violence was little spurts of violence that ebbed and flowed. Now, the police were called multiple times. Campus security was there the entire time, just standing, watching. At least 15. Either campus security or a security company that they hired. I don't know. I didn't see on their jackets. But they're there the whole time while these little spurts are starting. You know, you can feel that this is a pressure cooker that's about. You can feel it. And so if they intervened for both sides, for the protection of both sides, it would have been de-escalated. If the police arrived earlier than 2.5 hours later, also could have been de-escalated. But like, you throw emotions and tensions and continuous jabs at each other without being controlled at all or prevented, like, what do you expect?
Yeah. I that was one thing that I did find insane was the security, the police, just the authority presence was there, but not really. Like they weren't doing anything, and that was something that I found just insane because I would see people, right, getting bear sprayed or whatever that is and just fighting, and I just see the security off into the side, right? And when you go up to ask them, which I did, and they just stood there doing nothing. They just kind of stared at you and just kind of shrugged their shoulders, like, I don't know what's going on. But earlier during the day, they were very protective of the encampment. They wouldn't let anybody pass. Like their little walkway surrounding the encampment. They were very like tight security there. But when it came to nighttime, they weren't there. They weren't doing anything. So that's what something that I want to know the reason why was why they backed off from being so, having such a tight security around the encampment.
Why they backed off,
Mm-hmm.
and also why, like, of the encampment, that's a great question. Another great question that I have is when the pro-Palestinian or encampment protesters were preventing movement of Jewish students,
Mm-hmm.
how is that okay? Under any code of conduct, policy, school, city, state, how is that okay in any way? And there were a bunch of Jewish parents and even Jewish, like my friend called UCPD and the chancellor's office. There are videos of Jewish parents calling and saying, hi, hello, my son can't get into his class. And at first they don't understand. They're like, oh, like where? And they're like, oh, I don't know, wristbands or whatever. And they're like, oh, no. They've kind of just taken control over that.
That's crazy. Yeah.
So I think the security question is twofold. Like during the day, why were you so protective of the encampment, and then gloves off at night,
right?
Or just stand by? And then on the other side of that, why were you maybe not protective, but laissez-faire or implicitly encouraging the restriction of student movement? Because that, to me, the chancellor's statement, Jean Block's statement, and I don't remember the woman's name, but their statements that came out was so despicable in terms of not taking any ownership or accountability for their role in allowing the tensions to get so bad. Because also, I don't know if that counter protest or meetup would have happened if all the videos of restricting Jewish movements didn't come out, because that was insane. Because we felt abandoned, like we're completely abandoned by this school that each student pays tuition for,
right? Yeah.
And so I think there are multiple questions on the security front, and to just call it like extremely violent agitators that came and attacked our campus is incorrect and kind of punting responsibility on someone else and saying like, oh, there's nothing we could have done differently because these were rabid attackers.
Yeah, that was something, another good point. I mean, a lot of these students weren't able to go across campus. I saw many students having to go around, take a different route to class, and they were getting late. They're getting to their classes late and not being able to be able to, learn efficiently. I mean, everything was so distracted. I remember I saw a group of students or prospective students coming, in seeing the encampment. There was a lady showing them around, and then there's the encampment, just right there. And then she can't go, do the whole entire tour because, she's gonna have to go around.
That quad is a staple of UCLA. Like Royce and Powell, right. that quad is what UCLA started from. So
yeah. I've talked to even people who are older, way senior now. They're retired, but they went to UCLA and they're so sad about what has happened to the beautiful buildings there with the graffiti, just the floor itself graffitied and everything, all the trash that was there. But how do you, I mean, we talked a little bit about the chancellor's response. How do you feel like how they acted afterwards?
I think, well, you talk about the damage and you talk about the beautiful buildings. There wasn't a single mention of that. There wasn't a single condemnation or highlight on people shouldn't be attacked, but also don't vandalize our property. You know, like there was no fairness in terms of, okay, each side should take accountability. So the pro-Israel side was basically called out and condemned for the violence and all that stuff that happened, but also didn't happen against people that were sitting kumbaya and not doing anything. They were hitting people with metal rods and stealing 2x4s off the scaffolding that UCLA was using for construction. So you're not going to make any mention of that. And then, okay, fine, you want to blame all the violence on one side? That's fine. But how about saying it's also never okay to spray paint swastikas and intifada on school campus, on Royce Hall? So I think the statement that was, both the statements that were put out were shameful and a disgrace and an abandonment to all of the Jewish students, because there was no statement about restricting Jewish movement. There was no acknowledgement or official recognition of, hey, we've heard that this has been happening. It's absolutely not okay, and we do not condone any restriction of student movement. None of that. Nothing. Nobody has even mentioned it. And there are videos all over. It's not like, oh, where's the proof? There's proof. There's proof. There's multiple videos and multiple calls, multiple everything. And then UCPD tells parents that the school told them not to intervene. Right. So
that raises a lot of questions of why they weren't able to intervene sooner, right? Because leadership was obviously holding them back from doing that. Do you think that the university is taking a side in this whole entire thing?
I think that the nature of this conflict and the way that it's been portrayed from start to now, I think there is a clear bad guy and not like good guy, but there's an attacker and a victim. I think the way that people look at this conflict, and I'm talking about conflict Israel, Palestine. What's crazy is in every other conflict in the world, you can think about the conflict in one way, and then you can protest and advocate and all that stuff and human rights for all and marches and what have you. I think what's different about this conflict is that it has gone from, oh, I think Israel is the bad guy, to every pro-Israel Jewish person that's any way associated with Israel, Israeli products, Israeli companies, people, like they want to boycott James Bond because the actor is Jewish, and you want to tell me that it's not about Jews, it's about Zionists. You know, like, you don't know that he's a Zionist. You have no idea. So I think the taking of sides goes beyond who's the attacker and who's the victim. Let's support the people that are chiefing human rights. And it's this victimhood is just a blanket for all these people to be aggressive, attacking, and under the guise of protesting for human rights or protesting for what is right. And so I don't think I directly answered your question, but yes, I think they are taking sides. I think, yeah.
Yeah. Now, you did mention antifata, right? So I heard that all the time, but I don't know if how many people know what that means. So tell me what your experience, what you understand that means.
It's like thinking about it. Obviously, we've heard it and seen it. And for me, I don't even have to talk about it for me to get tears in my eyes for the fact that Antifada has even caught on as a chant because my parents are Israeli. I grew up with Israeli TV in my household. So I know, and so do all Israelis and most Jewish people, know what Antifada actually is. Antifada is maybe 2-3 suicide bombings a week. It is random stabbings. It is your friends went on the bus to go to the beach and that bus was bombed.
Right.
And so when people say Antifada, especially Americans, they have no idea what they're saying. And as much as we try to tell them, hey, this means X, it also means Arab death. It doesn't just mean Jewish death. And it's like, for it to mean Jewish death, that should be enough for you to be like, oh, holy, I'm not going to chant that because that's insane.
Right.
That's like chanting like concentration camp, which we saw in Australia saying gas the Jews. But okay, fine. You don't care about Jewish death. That's fine. Arabs need to die to carry out Antifada. Arabs need to be arrested. Arabs need to be killed or martyred for Antifada to be carried out. So if you're for Palestinian rights or against Islamophobia or all that stuff, why are you not chanting peace? Why are you not saying, that's fine, you can say two-state solution. Two-state solution. That's great. Two-state solution. But same thing with like from the river to the sea.
Yeah.
Like, okay, so Israel goes where? Oh, nowhere. Go back to where you came from. But where we are, that's never where we're from, you know? Like, the problem during World War II is that we were stateless and that we weren't real Germans or real Poles or real this.
Yeah.
We were Jews first and then our countrymen, so kill them all. And then now that we have a state, it's like, no, get out of that territory and go back, you know? So it's like we were killed for not having a state and now we're hated for having a state. So it's like you can't win.
Right. Yeah, that is the feeling. How, I guess, taking a step back from the school itself, but talking about how do your family and friends feel right now? Because I have seen a lot of people just get hate for having the Star of David on like a sticker on their car. So how has the feel been for you? The vibe, I guess. I don't know. Yeah.
I think there are levels. I think it depends on like the age group that you're talking about because like my parents, their parents were Holocaust survivors and exiled Jews. So my dad is like, turn it off, don't pay attention, like we'll get through this, you know, kind of thing. My mom, her heart breaks for what we're going through and she just doesn't understand. But then I think when you go kind of a little younger to social media, people that use social media, and anything you post or anything you see or it's constant, like my entire feed is Israel or this conflict. Whereas before it was my friends' traveling pictures or school or whatever. So we feel like, and again, anybody can advocate for whatever they want, but it's like, how are you so passionate when you just got here? You know what I mean? Like to the people that are marching in the streets or camping out or all this stuff, like you don't even know where these places are on the map. You never looked into this, and some of them maybe do. But the amount of people that are so passionate to the point where they're ripping down hostage posters, they don't know. And so I think it's frustration that we are passionate because we're directly affected. Because every Israeli, some Jew, but every Israeli knows someone who was killed, kidnapped, or attacked. Like my cousin was at that festival. So it's like he easily could have ended up as one of the hostages, easily. And I thank God that he wasn't. But there are still 200 plus people that were taken hostage and 134 people that are still hostages. And so when people are chanting Intifada, from the river to the sea, go back to this, all this stuff and whatever, we are, as much as we engage, we kind of trying to like tune it out and be like, we just need to get these hostages home. Like, and I think that's what breaks our heart is like feminists, BLM, all these before like super active for human rights and all that stuff were very vocal about like all life and believe all women and we should all this and all this stuff and don't kill. It's like you are chanting in the streets while 134 people, including 2 children, are being held hostage. And you're yelling at us for posting about Holocaust Remembrance Day or about what's happening. Yeah. And I think my friends in Israel, they feel safer than we do. Like, they ask me how I'm doing when I ask them how they are. And they're like, we're fine. We have the Iron Dome. Like, none of the bombs hit. Like, when Iran sent 300 multiple missiles, I texted all my Israeli friends and I was like, how are you? They're like, it was really scary. We're totally fine. But also, how are you? Because I see things are going insane. And I'm like, honestly, we'll see.
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff just happening just between friends, family that just here. And Tara, I don't know if you have any questions if you want to jump in. She's finally here, guys. She's here. She's made it.
Sorry I'm late.
No, it's all good.
No, yeah, childcare, you know how that is. Anyway, so I'm Tara. I'm the other side of 180. And just hearing you talk about this, wow, I mean, just just having friends who are in Israel right now and dealing with this and experiencing it, it's just like, oh my goodness, yeah, it must be terrifying. And yeah, I mean, you went to UCLA. I wasn't able to go to UCLA, but just seeing that here too, I mean, it is crazy though. But I mean, have we seen like have there been any acts of violence? I'm kind of asking a question here that I could probably just look up, but
at UCLA?
Like anywhere in these protests? Like, I mean, acts of violence against Jewish people.
For sure.
Really?
For sure. Even on Sunday when I was at the rally, like the counter protest, and I was explaining how they kind of set up their like counter protest.
Yeah.
And so you could be with the protest where it was like good vibes and speeches and music, or you could go over frontline, and we were like this. We were like person to person. Like I was like talking to people like this, and they pepper sprayed a whole row of people. Like, and most of them were women. One of them was an elderly woman. So it's like,
that's real nice. Yeah.
You know, like pepper spray. People were pushed down. The act of violence that set off the violence at UCLA was when they tried to come out and steal the speaker. And then in the like struggle for the speaker, it turned into a brawl, you know? And so I think that was like the spark, because it's like you have most of them were younger kids on the pro-Israel side. Like I wasn't in the starting group, you know, I just heard that it was happening and I live close, but it's like it wasn't an intentional let's go attack. Like nobody brought anything, like nobody had anything on them. They had fireworks and I don't know what. And so the initial act was that interaction. Now I'm not saying they came out of the encampment and just attacked. It was a mutual thing, you know, like the brawl started. But they hit a kid in the face with a skateboard or a plank of wood. Like, I wasn't close enough to see it, but I saw him after, and like his nose, his mouth, gushing blood, like gushing. So that was the first thing of violence that I saw, and I got there around 11:30, and I think it started 10:30, 11-ish. And then it went from chill to violent to chill to violent to chill to violent. But I think that was the initial spark. At that moment, I called police, and they're like, we're handling it, hung up on me. Campus security was right there, didn't do anything. Multiple people called the police. So it's like, if there was intervention, I think it could have been avoided. But then they're messing with each other, you know what I mean? Like talking crap to each other. And at one point, because they had the planks of wood and then they had the metal barricades. And at it was like straight out of a Spartan movie. Like they advanced, but it was like forward, like it was literally like 3, 2, 1, and then you could hear the step. It was crazy. Like you could hear the like duh, duh of like steps, and then like they pushed forward. And I think after that, it was like, okay, like this is about to like something's about to go down, and then it was like violent chill, violent chill, violent chill. But they were hitting they were hitting through their barricades, like with metal pipes, with umbrella bases. Like it wasn't a peaceful gathering that was just randomly attacked.
Now, I just have one other question. So, you know, we talked about BLM, feminism, this culture pushing this, way of thinking. But what do you think that there's any educational, like any of this pro-Palestine, anti-Israel stuff was being taught in the classroom of these colleges?
100%.
You think? Yeah, you
100%.
think so?
You follow everybody, every movie we've seen, every book we've seen is like, follow the money. You know, like everything you have to like determine whether something is true or not. People are like, oh, follow the money. Qatar is one of the biggest donors to American schools in the world. Qatar. What does Qatar have anything to do with American education? I know another thing about Qatar is all Hamas leadership lives in Qatar. So Qatar, Saudi Arabia, all those predominantly Arab, predominantly Muslim countries, millions, hundreds of millions of dollars into U.S. schools. The agreement with Northwestern that just resulted from the encampment situation is that Palestinian students get a free ride. Fine. If you want to make the argument that they're disenfranchised and all that stuff, just saying that that's not granted, that hasn't been granted for anyone, but that's fine. And Palestinian professors must be hired. And I think some of them have to be from Al Jazeera, which is Qatar run and basically Hamas like collusion. So it's like, how does that free Palestine? If your encampment was for the purpose of freeing Palestine, ending this genocide, which is actually just a war, how does that agreement further any of your goals or the purpose that you were camping out on the lawn?
Yeah.
Like I would love to know that from them.
I heard one person say, and I don't know if they all seem to be doing it for different reasons, but this one person said it was like a theatrical display of colonialism. We're going to go and steal the campus's land and then set up tents and then, colonize and make everybody go into camps.
So I love the colonizing point, because if you feel so passionately about that, then you should move out of your home in America and give it to a Native American, because they're so passionate that they're ready to tear this shit down, but you are in a colonialist country, and there are Native Americans that are living on reservations while you are living in your house in Brentwood, or you're growing up in Beverly Hills. So you should move out of your house and give it back to them. And the Palestinian claim to land isn't even as strong as the Native Americans, so why do you feel so strongly about that, but you ignore what's happening here?
Yeah, no more hot topic.
Now, I did get the question so what is Zionism? Because it's being thrown around by everyone, and some people are very proud to call themselves Zionists, right? And then there's other people that are throwing it around like a bad word. So tell us what that is.
So I think the only way that it can be thrown out as a bad word is rooted in anti-Semitism. And the reason why is, and it's funny because I'm actually very educated on this topic, because I took history of modern Israel, Arab-Israeli conflict. Like, I wanted to study it beyond just what I was taught by my parents. So Zionism was actually started in the 1800s, or was a movement or ideology that began in the 1800s by Theodor Herzl. And this is like the Jewish diaspora. Everyone knows that there's Jews all over the world because they've been kicked out of everywhere that they were, including Israel. So it's a movement that was started in the 1800s that basically said the Jews need a state. You know, like Christians have a state, Muslims have a state, like all the two other Abrahamic religions have a state. Now, I'm not saying a religion needs a state, but that's kind of the counter argument to people saying, like, you shouldn't, like, have a state just because you want a Jewish state. Well, everybody's fine with the United States and everybody's fine with the 40-plus Muslim countries.
Right.
But so Zionism was a movement that was started in the 1800s for a Jewish homeland because we need safety, we need security. And so there was actually a mass migration, and now not mass by today's numbers, but back then, there was a push to go back to Israel. And there were Jews that were always there. There were some Jews that never left. But this Zionism started in the 1800s. A bunch of Jews started moving back. It was still the British mandate of Palestine. Again, I don't know if you guys have discussed this or you've known this, but you ask any of these pro-Palestinian protesters where the word Palestine comes from, and they have no idea. It's not Arabic. It's not in the Quran. So it's not from Islam. It was Roman when they destroyed the kingdom of Judah because they wanted to disconnect and disassociate the Jewish population from the land of Judah. So that's just where the word Palestine comes from. But I digress. So a lot of Jews moved into the British Mandate of Palestine, and Arabs and Jews were living side by side, all good because you're kind of united against a common enemy, which was the British, because it's kind of like, what are you guys doing here? Now, what's funny and what a lot of people don't know is that the Arab population had multiple opportunities for an Arab-run state before Israel was created. So in 1919, and I think before or during World War I, they kind of said like, hey, British were like, hey, not the British. Yeah, the British were like, help us fight against the Ottoman Empire and we'll get your own country. 1917, 1919, that kind of fell through. And then 1939 white papers, everybody can look this up. It's not fake news, it's history. They were given an opportunity for an Arab-controlled state, and all they had to do was let in 75,000 Jews for 5 years, like per year for 5 years, and then they could cut the border. They could close down the border, and then that's good. And the Mufti, like the Grand Mufti at that time, was like, absolutely not. No Jew should have kind of like a valid right to come in. And so they lost that chance. And then we all know what happens, the Holocaust. And so the Holocaust, hand in hand with the Zionist movement that was already started, that already happened, was kind of like, this is why Zionism was started. Like, in the 1800s, nobody could even imagine that 6 million Jews were about to be incinerated and murdered. But it was kind of like this is the support to prove why Zionism needs to exist. And that's what Zionism is. It's just the belief that the Jews should return to the homeland and have a state of their own.
Isn't the concept of Zionism? I mean, it's been around since like biblical Old Testament times, right?
So the movement, like the movement that everybody's kind of like associating the word with, was started in the 1800s. Like, but the
concept.
Yeah, the concept of a Jewish homeland is
as old as time.
Timeless. Yeah. It's absolutely timeless. But it's like when people say like Zionism this and Zionism that, like that's what like Zionism
comes from. Yeah, that's
is
what that term
in modern terms.
Yeah. No,
and so
sense.
It's like, what's the problem? It's just another trigger word for them to use to be like, oh, Zionists are the new Nazis. Like, how dare you? How dare you?
Yeah. No, I mean, I've just been reading the Old Testament, and it's like, it's like talking about how the Philistines,
which translates to invaders.
Yeah, and and then God was sending the Jewish people to go take back their homeland from the Philistines, and it's just like, wow, that's like eerily similar to this word. It's like,
yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. Now, I hear some people say that they support like Palestine but not Hamas. Is that a thing that people can do? Like I guess there's a second question to this. There's some like Israelis or just Jewish people who don't support Israel and what's happening, instead supporting Palestine. So it's an interesting sort of logic. But how do you think about that?
I think it's multi-layered. To answer the first question, in terms of there's people that support Palestine but don't support Hamas, here, absolutely correct. You can support the people's need or right or insert word for statehood, independence, all that kind of stuff, without supporting the bloodthirsty terrorist, quote-unquote, government that runs them. Now, I know that not all Palestinians in Gaza and in the West Bank, I know that not all of them support Hamas. However, when you look back to the videos of October 7th and you see the streets filled, young, old, male, female, with people cheering as the naked body of a slain German, not Israeli, I mean, she was Jewish Israeli, but woman is being paraded through the streets, it's very hard for me to not necessarily believe, but for me to acknowledge and recognize that Hamas is just a small number of people, because and I'm not blaming the people, Hamas has been in full, complete, unoccupied control of Gaza since 2005. That's almost 20 years, meaning every baby that was born from 2005 to now was raised under Hamas leadership. And so if Hamas's charter and life's mission and death's mission is to kill as many Jews as possible, most, if not all, of the children that were born since Hamas took over also share that belief. Now, again, I'm not calling all of them Hamas or terrorists, but it's an ideology. It is education. Their school textbooks teach math with how many Jews you kill. Their school plays are depictions of abducting Israeli soldiers and killing them. Like, that's, I can show you a kindergarten graduation ceremony that's kids playing out Hamas and a little boy being like a Jew that they are taking into the tunnels. So it's very difficult, and that's why, whether it's a popular or unpopular opinion, I personally believe that the only way to give the Palestinians their lives back is a reoccupation and eradication of this Hamas ideology and re-education, and kind of like, okay, once we get all that out, then fine. You want to act like a state? Have a state. That's not my problem. But my problem is that every single person there wishes me dead.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That is a good point. Now, Terry, did you have any more questions? I did want to go into like reading some of the comments too.
Oh, yeah.
No, but did you have anything? Last question? No? Okay, that's fine. Okay, so there's one comment to your thing was send in the National Guard, problem solved. What do you think about that solution?
To the schools? Or yeah, absolutely. I think like they sent in the National Guard to Little Rock, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So if the same thing was happening against Black students, or there was an encampment kind of standing against Black students, then we wouldn't stand for this. No part of it would be okay. We would do whatever we can to disband it immediately. Like Princeton, hats off to Princeton, good job to them. University of Texas also. University of Texas bulldozed through those protesters immediately. Princeton, I'm pretty sure they set up like a few tents and they were taken down immediately, and then problem solved. Classes are continuing like normal. Students are studying for the exams. Commencement is going forward. Like, everything is fine. You want to protest? Go for it. But why are you taking people's education and the opportunity to kind of revel in the accomplishment that is graduation
Right.
when they pay tuition and this is like their life and their family's dream. Like, you don't know how many people are first generation college students or it was their dream school or their parents graduated X amount of years ago and now they're following their, so you took that away from them for
Right.
what?
One thing I did realize is that the same people who are graduating this year, so 2024, are the ones that did not get the graduation back in 2020 because of COVID from high school. So these are the same ones who didn't have a graduation for high school, and for some of the schools like USC, it's at USC, yeah, they won't have a graduation either. So that's terrible to me because they didn't get to do high school, so they're probably very much looking forward to college, and then that's kind of like all taken away.
Yeah, but it's partially their peers' fault, you know.
It is.
That's what I'm saying. Like, it is fully their peers' fault. But that's
Yeah.
also the thing. How does that free Palestine?
Mm.
How does canceling your own and your friend's graduation free Palestine? Because the world is going to keep spinning. Israel's not going anywhere because Israel, God willing, will never go anywhere because the Jewish people are still here, so we'll be fine. But in 5 years from now, 10 years from now, when you think back to college, you're going to be like, damn, I wish I had a graduation, but I was too busy camping out on the lawn, freeing Palestine, and Palestine's still not free. But
Yeah.
I'd never gone to graduation.
I mean, for me, it was just kind of silly because some of those campuses are like Disneyland, you know? It's like, why are you burning down Disneyland?
Right.
Like, how is that doing? That doesn't even...
No.
Yeah, it reminds me of the BLM riots. So one thing that some of the rioters did near my place was they burnt down a Dollar Tree. I was like, isn't that directly... No, because... Dollar Tree is a corporation.
owner
And
is
it's like, guys, that's where I get like 90% of my baby supplies. Like, please don't do that to me. You're like
Yeah.
screwing me over, you know? Like, how is this totally counterproductive? So to see them all, burning down their own campuses, it was just kind of like silly to me. I was like, what? Like, okay.
Now, I did get another comment. So this person says there are news sources claiming that Zionist perpetrators were funded by Bill Ackman. No?
It was a bunch of high school students that were like, this will be fun. Let's go play some music.
Mm-hmm.
And then once the attack started, or like once it got violent, more people showed up because it's like, okay, this might, like, you don't know what's going to happen. And it's kind of, I don't know, it was up in the air. But nobody was funded by any, also funded how? Paid to go out in the middle of the night. I'm pretty sure most kids are totally fine doing that for free.
Mm-hmm.
And if they were funded, they would have material. Like,
Right.
you want to talk about
They would
funding?
come with stuff.
You want to talk about funding? Let's talk about the crates of things that were being walked into these camps with like signs and faculty tables and
Right.
and uniform tents and security guards that were outside the barricades, literally holding wood. Like, that's funding. Funding is not a bunch of kids that had a speaker that are down to brawl because they've been yelled at, ridiculed, told that they should die for the last 7 months.
Yeah. Another question is safe with the mask. And then it says, are you stupid, right? So I had mentioned in one of my videos that the masks that we were talking about in the beginning, how they all have to wear masks for safety of I guess spreading with virus, sickness, but
Spreading what virus?
Right.
Spreading what sickness?
Mhm.
We're basically in summer. So
Yeah.
you could maybe use that excuse for December.
Yeah. But do you think they were using that for masking who they are?
100%. I think it was so funny because from one of the rallies, they had a sign that it said, "You can't defeat people that aren't afraid." And so I said, if you're not afraid, why do you have a mask? If you're not afraid of either consequences or what you're going to be doing, then why cover your face? Because you go to the Jewish side or the pro-Israel side, and almost nobody is covering their face. There's one or two, and you look at them weird because you're like, what are you doing? And maybe they're going to be up to no good. But we don't cover our faces because we're not afraid or ashamed or maybe something will happen to us, because we know that we're not trying to incite or attack, or our intention is never, we love life. We love peace. We want peace. I don't want to know that my friends are gearing up, about to go back in. So it's like I was just in South America for a year, and most of the Israelis do like a post-army trip. And most of them do South America, either Southeast Asia or South America. A lot of the people that I met on my trip were Israelis, because it's like you have the same, I speak Hebrew, so it's like you have the same language, banter, all that stuff. So I made really, really good friends with these people, and they're on their post-army trip. They finished 3 years of the army, sometimes more, and now they're just relaxing. And some of them either just got back and this started, or they had to cut their trip short to go back into the army. When they were already released, their service was done. And it's like, I think 90% of the guys that I met went back in. Right. Thank God nobody yet, and knock on wood that nobody will, that I personally know has fallen. But like one of my parents' really good friends jumped on a grenade to protect his niece and his daughter. And now they don't have an uncle and a dad. So it's like everyone was kind of just living their life, and this happened to us, and people like forget, and then they want to call genocide when we respond, which like that doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah. Tara, did you have another question?
Well, I mean, we were talking about the Bible, and you hear a lot of the times like, pro-Israeli people saying that like, this is, like Jews are always attacked, and this is always a thing that happened in, Israel is a holy land, and this is, fulfilling the prophecy of like, God tells us to conquer those who come against the godly people, But I mean, what's your response to Christians who, quote things like, I don't know, Matthew 23, where Jesus basically denounces Israel as such a holy land because they reject the living God, which is him, I mean, what's your response to that conflict between like, Jesus followers who say, this is not like, we need to stay out of this because right now we're just bystanders and there's something bigger going on, whether it's a spiritual war or not, we're bystanders. We can no longer side or with or against Israel because, it's not, because biblically, according to Jesus, bad things were happening to Israelites because of unholy practices in the temples, abuse of their power, like Pharisees abusing their power. So what's your response to Christians who kind of have the perspective of, I want to stay out of this because, and then they'll quote stuff like Matthew 23, like what Jesus said?
I think that's also multi-leveled. In the Old Testament, I commend you for being able to quote verses. I don't know where it says, but in the Old Testament, like it is said, like you will be the people of Israel, the Jewish people. You will be a great nation, but you will be a tiny nation. Like you will always be hated. So that's kind of a prophecy in itself. So the kind of like the argument that Jesus was right and bad things are happening because of that. I agree that the Jews were not kind of stepping up to the plate and they were doing bad things and bad things happened. But that's kind of my response to that. Like the constant attack of Jews is just kind of, it is what it is. And the response to kind of like Christians' beliefs, I guess, like while, and I can't speak for all Jewish people, I'm like talking about myself, while like I respect the belief in Jesus, like he's not our Messiah, and so like we don't adhere to the new, we don't follow the New Testament, we just follow the Old Testament. So what Jesus says about like what is going to happen to Israel, like that's kind of like above my pay grade because I don't follow Jesus.
Yeah.
And again, everybody is welcome to stay out of, like, to be a bystander of the conflict there. You can say, I'm staying out of this, like, figure it out. Jesus said yes, Jesus said no. That's fine. What I think is that the conflict that's happening here, less people should be bystanders, because again, what starts with the Jews doesn't end with the Jews. And also, like, they're chanting death to America. They're ripping down American flags. Like, this is no longer about Israel, you know? So it's like and I was saying before, like, you can have whatever view you want on the conflict in the Middle East. You can say, Israel's doing this, Palestine's doing that, they should get this, they should have as many beliefs as you want. But when that translates into constant attack, vandalism, boycotting, slurs, violence against Jews and America, I think that's when it goes beyond, hey, let's stay out of it because it's in the Middle East. It's like, this is getting insane. Yeah. And it's like, Jews' homes are being marked. Like, businesses are being boycotted. That's the same thing as putting a Jewish star on a Jewish door, writing Jude on a Jewish business. Like, now there's an app for boycotting Israeli products, and it's like, okay, you should toss your phone out because the chip in the phone, Israeli, Intel, Israeli, like, not an Israeli company, but it's like, they run on Israel technology or advancements. So it's like...
So why did they get rid of the Truth Social so many times if that's allowed?
That's crazy.
That's insane.
Yeah. Now, I do want to get you out of here soon, so I'll give you one more question, but what are ways that so non-Jewish people like me able to help our Jewish friends during this time?
I think not staying silent anymore, because I have a lot of friends that I appreciate them with my entire heart, that either texted me or check in on me. And I love that. But when we engage in conversations, they're like, I hear so many stories about, like, someone at work said something about Palestine and I just didn't want to get involved. Or, like, someone said something here, or I heard this and I just didn't, you know, a lot of it is I just didn't want to get involved. And maybe, like, 7 months ago, 5 months ago, 3 months ago, whatever. But I think I don't want to get involved has, like, emboldened this movement to, we can say whatever, we can do whatever, we can attack whoever and whatever we want, and no one's going to say anything because, you know, like, they're so intimidating and they get so violent about it, and, like, they get so intense that no one who's not Jewish or not Israeli, like, they don't want that. Like, they don't want that heat on them, and they're like, whoa, I'm not, like, that involved. I just, you know, I have a friend and she said it's like this, you know? I think the time for not getting involved has passed. I'm not going to ask anybody to get involved on our behalf. It's more so, like, on your own behalf. Like, this is happening in our country. Like, right. I'm not even talking about Europe or whatever. American flags are being burned. Police are being attacked or ignored. Universities with almost 300 years of, like, impeccable history and esteem are being crumbled by these protests and the lack of response, because people don't want to be Islamophobic or offend. And, like, no one's worrying about offending Jews. No one. Not a single person is like, that might be offensive to the Jews if we say this. People are like, oh, what? Well, they'll be fine. You know, like, it's fine. So I think that's my one thing. And if you don't know, educate yourself. Ask me, ask your friends, look it up, kind of get into it. And if doing your own research results in you wholeheartedly supporting Palestine, that's totally fine. But do your research on the conflict and then realize that that is separate than the attack on Jewish life and existence that's happening here.
Yeah. That's really weird.
Yeah, I can definitely agree that, you know, the students making it an issue here was absolutely ridiculous. It was just like, oh, goodness, are you kidding me? You guys don't even know anything about this issue.
But also what's so interesting to me, and again, like, being aware of, like, Ukraine and Russia are still at war.
Yeah.
Like, no one's going around attacking Russians and being like, well, you want to steal land and all this stuff.
It's not trendy.
And that's fine. I'm not asking you to. But Azerbaijan just ethnically cleansed Armenians out of Artsakh. And Nothing. Like, if I was Armenian, I would be furious.
Here in
Right.
Glendale, people were furious. Everywhere else, nobody knew. It was crazy.
But I'm saying I would be furious at the level of
disconnect.
of
Yeah, nothing happening.
of protesting for a non-genocide
Yeah.
and non-ethnic cleansing when
Yeah.
my people are literally being, you
Yeah.
know, like that's
Oh,
what I would be
absolutely.
upset about.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
That's crazy.
Well, all right.
Well, you
It's
know
been
what?
an hour. Our
Yes.
technical director is
But
knocking.
thank you so much for coming on. It was
Thank you.
last minute, but
Yes.
you
thank
have been
yeah.
such a great source of knowledge and just a great conversation to have. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
But yeah, okay. Well, everybody, make sure to check out our social medias at 180 Shift and our website 180shift.org. But yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great.